Hi y'all, it's Angie with The Source. As you know, we are here again, and Angie doesn't ever speculate. I always talk about topics that are real, controversial. We talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful. And with that being said, as you know, today we are going to be talking about police reform. We know that there's a lot of things going on in our communities, in our world, in our nation, in regards to the issues of police brutality, and also issues in the community, how people perceive that. And so it's important that we look from both sides of the table and talk about that and have a real discussion about that. And so today I have some incredible people on my show. I'm just blessed to have them here, and I am gonna get this show started. But as you know, I always swear my guests in because we tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So with that being said, my first guest is Dr. Patricia Ross. She comes to us with United for Human Rights, and it's an organization that is global in regards to human rights. I don't know if you guys know what your human rights are, but the UN adopted 30 human rights back in the day when Miss Roosevelt called their team and called all the countries together, and basically the ambassadors and people came together and they decided on a declaration of 30 human rights. So we're going to talk about that too, because it's very important for you guys to know and be educated about that, on what your human rights are, because really to have those human rights, the only qualification is being human. So with that being said, since we're talking about police reform, we're talking about life, we're talking about humanity, I felt it necessary for her to be on the show. I also have Charletta Evans. She is an amazing woman. She has gone through a lot of trial and tribulation, but she is now a huge advocate in the community. Not only that, nationally. Her voice has gone and resounded in regards to her story and what she stands for. She's involved with restorative justice. She just started a program, organization actually, VOMI, and I'm actually on her board. And so I'm very excited on what she's doing, because she's a victim's advocate and she focuses on the homicide and murder with a lot of tragedy. And so we are coming together and we are putting this program together, and we're lifting it up, and we're going to be addressing those topics that are happening in our communities, because a lot of times people don't think this is happening in our communities, but it is. Sometimes we're so distracted where we don't even say, oh, okay, that doesn't affect me. That's not in my house, and that's not in my community. Oh, I'm not in that culture. Well, it does affect you. It does affect you, and it's important for you to be educated and empowered. So I'm excited for her to be here so we can have this discussion. Right here next to me is Colorado State Representative Javon Melton. Sorry about that. And he is an amazing advocate. He actually had, he's sitting on actually legislation and in the House. And so there is 5 bills that have recently passed in Colorado regarding law enforcement reform. And so we're going to talk about that and what he sponsored and what has gone through the House, because I think it's important for other states also to look at what Colorado has done and what we continue to do in regards to accountability. And so we're going to talk about that today, and he's going to bring his expertise to the table. Next to him is Pastor George Roberts.
Yes, you.
And he is a huge voice in regards to activism and human rights, and I felt it necessary for him to be on here to also put his standpoint on what's going on with this issue that is right in front of us. And also I have a candidate running for Senate, Sebastian Chan. And so he's also involved in community. He also wants to talk about this issue. He has a lot to bring to the table, because obviously if he gets elected, which he will, we're talking to legislators that are going to do something for this issue, and he's going to be representing Colorado, and he's going to be a huge voice at the federal level.
I'm state.
Oh, state level. Okay. So, but still. Okay, I'm kind of like putting you up there. right. So I felt it necessary for him to be here too, so that we can have this discussion. So I would like to swear all of you in. So, guys, lift up your hands. Do you guys just swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
All right, let's get this show started. So let's talk about this real topic. Here in 2016, we know in the beginning of 2016, there was 532 murders by police officers of unarmed people that had issues with maybe mental illness. They were unarmed and they were people of color. And so that fact is a fact. And I want to talk about this issue and go deep into it as to what we can do to really bring about change and really give our opinions on how we're going to address it. So, I mean, I would like to ask you, Patricia, Dr. Patricia,
Yes.
what is your take on this issue?
As you said, it's a fact. It is a fact that this has happened. When I look at something like that, I have to ask, what made that happen? And what are the other statistics that are involved with it? Because you can get lost in statistics. When I look at it from a human rights perspective, I say, okay, we have a human right that says that we have the right to life. We all have the right to life and to live in freedom and safety. So I always think that there's two sides to a story. And we hear the one, and we don't like that those 500, how many did you say?
532.
I was going to say 537. 532 people died unarmed at the hand of police officers. But what happened? What was the other part of the story? Because as we were talking before the show, when you have something on the table that says, is this racist? It's like, then I think that we have to ask ourselves from a human rights perspective, is that a question that's going to divide us? Or is it a question that's going to connect us? Because we can talk all day long about the injustices because they are numerous. But is that going to get us anywhere? What's going to actually bring us to connection as opposed to division? So, like you said, the fact is the fact, but what is the other part of the story? Was that perhaps police officer felt threatened in some way? Was that police officer doing something that they shouldn't have been doing? We have to ask those questions as opposed to immediately go to, oh, it's a race card. And it may be, but it may be something else. And I think that if we're going to affect change, we have to go, to make change happen, we have to ask those harder questions that go beyond the obvious.
And that's really important. I think each case should be reviewed and should be investigated. A lot of times when we look at, our judicial system, we look at our legal system, they're connected to that. And a lot of times, some people are not held accountable.
I agree.
So the accountability factor is important because as for me, like I can't go out there and if I feel threatened, I can't go out there and if I feel threatened by someone and shoot someone and kill them and murder them, because I felt threatened, I would stand trial. Yes. I would be accountable for that human life. Yeah. And I understand like sometimes like our police officers, because I have friends and I have family that are in law enforcement. I work with a lot of individuals because of the issues of human trafficking that I'm involved in. And so for me, they're awesome people. And so I'm not going to take away from the good because there's good and there's bad, in all aspects. And we do need to ask those questions, but I think it's important for the accountability factor and instead of just having, someone come in and do an investigation in the same agency or, the police department and just say, okay, well, sorry, that happened, but we're not going to do anything about it.
That's right. And that's not, there's the accountability issue, and as Human Right 11 says, we're always innocent till proven guilty. Nobody should be blamed for doing something until it is proven. So again, let's go to the facts. Who really is accountable here? And be willing to accept the fact that it might not be the answer that we want, you know? And it might be the black person, it might be the white person, it might be the Hispanic person. Because at the end of the day, as you said, we're all human.
We are.
And it's the human right that matters. It's the human right to life that matters. Not that one entity should trump another entity just because that's what's expedient right now. That's what everybody thinks should happen right now, because that's not going to get us anywhere. And that goes back to that original question that I have. I look at all actions is that, when I'm talking human rights, I look at it as, is that something that is going to divide us more, or is it going to lead us to some sort of connection?
And I think it's important to have connection. You guys are welcome to chime in with this
I'll
conversation, because this is a real topic. And so from what she's saying, we all have our perspective in regards to this issue.
Yeah.
And yes, we don't want to be divided. We don't want the good police officers, which I believe there's more good than there is bad. I really do. I see that. But the thing is, it's important for people to be held accountable.
Absolutely, on both sides of it. And if there's a police officer who is doing something that is not right, that is using force unlawfully, they're subject to the law, just like all of the rest of us, right?
You know, I know of a police officer who was involved in 4 murders. And he shot a family member of mine after the Ferguson trial. And he shot my little family member, and he got off. How does a police officer get off when you shoot a young man who has his hands up and he gets shot through the hand?
Yeah.
And then you acquit the police officer and then make him a lieutenant.
See,
And
that's
and you have to ask, is that right?
No,
How
it's
is that
not right,
sensible?
because
How is that sensible?
number one,
It's not.
I don't blame the police officer, I blame the superiors.
Yeah.
No disrespect to Chief White, met him, a good person. And man, I don't know if any shootings that he's been involved in, but then I look at Mayor Hancock. What are you doing to discipline your officers on the police department or in the sheriff's department? Why are they still doing what they did yesterday?
Right. And the sheriff's
And
department
it
is
starts
something
from the
important.
head. If the head's not right, neither
right.
is the body.
That's right.
And
That's
if
right.
you
And
work
they
for
react.
them, yes.
And what's your take,
Well, and
Devon?
one thing I would add on to both points, one especially around accountability and holding our officers accountable, is how are we trying them? Are they going before a DA that they work with every day, that they have a relationship with, or are they going to an independent monitor or independent
Well, that's a good
DA?
point.
Something that we've looked at in the legislature, and unfortunately have been able to pass, but we're continuing to pursue that. But one thing I want to go back to is the question of whether or not someone is found, or is at least had due process,
Yeah.
had that trial and found
Yes.
guilty before innocent. One thing I think that the community is frustrated with, especially around these shootings, is they feel like they're being executed before
That's
they
right.
actually
stand
have
trial.
a trial.
Yes.
Now, when you say they, who is they?
I would say, I mean, members of
Victims.
the African American community,
Victims,
Okay.
black, white, Hispanic, it doesn't matter.
The
Victims
victims.
are being found guilty and sentenced to death before trial. What gives a police officer, what happened to the warning
said.
shots? What happened to shoot me in the leg or, hey man, but why are they doing headshots? My little family member had to crawl up under the car and he was shot 5 times. The
Yeah.
first time in the hand should have been a warning shot.
Well,
And then for him to crawl
okay.
up under a car so he won't get shot no more, man, that's not constitutional and that's not human.
It isn't human and it isn't constitutional, but I would ask the really hard question, because you swore us in to ask the hard question. Is when
Yes,
you were
I
swearing
did.
to
Yes,
ask the
I
truth and not
did,
the
because we
truth.
tell the truth.
I want to know what happened, because let me preface it with this, because I don't think that it does any of us any good to say it's you against me, it's us against them. It's when you create that kind of division, you are gonna always lose, right? So I want to say, what really was going on? Because I don't think we ever get the
It
full
was a traffic
story.
stop.
Okay, if it
One
was a
police
traffic
officer
stop,
shot out of 5 police
then
officers.
if it was a traffic stop, then the police, then our justice system, by what the human rights tell
Right,
us,
right.
says that they need to be tried, they need to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Just like if you broke the law, you need to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. If I broke the law, I would expect the very same thing.
So if I have a
Absolutely.
broken light, headlight, a back tail light, I get pulled over. Does that give the police officer right to pull me out of the car? And then
Yeah.
I put my hands up, and then you shoot me.
And what we're asking, what we're talking about here are issues of police procedure.
And this is the same police officer that killed
well, and
4
it's
other
like,
people. But yet he's still on the force? Does he
See,
got a
and-
license to kill, or does he have a license to protect and serve?
well, what do you think?
I think
license to
that
protect and
we got a
serve.
renegade. I think we got somebody that's on the force that's a time bomb that's about to do something to somebody else as a lieutenant.
And
Okay,
you-
yeah,
so
okay.
with that, but with that being said, like I think it's vitally important because as I'm an RN by profession, okay, so I had to take an oath whenever I decided to be a nurse. I had to take an oath in regards to standing and being an advocate on behalf of my patient and to really educate them about their patient's bills of rights and to really guide them through that system. And so I think when people are professionals and they're serving, you know, the community, and I know that there can be some hard communities, I think it's important also with the police officers that they're sworn in to serve and to protect.
Yes.
And I think it's vitally important that there has to be, when there's officers going to be out in the community, that it's very important that there should be a mental exam, there should be obviously a background. If there's consistency of
Consistency.
of issues already at the beginning, and it say like several years ago that this is what they were, but people can change. But if it's consistent within the
Consistent.
last like 3 or 1, 2 or 2 years, like you
Consistent.
cannot get behind a badge. I don't think that that's in, because the
And
state
then
of
he gets
Colorado.
promoted.
Yeah, and then the state
Yeah.
of Colorado won't allow a nurse that has any issues in their
That's right.
background, because we get an FBI, you know, background, all of those different kinds of things before we can go out into the
Even
community.
the pastor,
It's
if a
the same-
pastor does wrong,
Yeah.
he has to do a sabbatical. He has to sit down for a season before he can get back in that pulpit and minister the gospel to his congregation. So
And that's
if we're
the
going to do the
consistently-
job
Yeah.
that we was hired to do, or we was called to do, or chosen to do, man, I think there should be some professionalism in it.
There has to be
You got
a
renegade
level of
police
So how are we
officers
going
out
to do
here.
this? How do we do this when you have?
You evaluate that police officer and ask them what was the issues for people before this young man right here. What's causing you to be a trigger man, to be so happy? Is it to be to put in a cult or a brotherhood, or do you have to be? How can I say? Just like the same thing with Bloods and Crips, they have to do an initiation in order to become a
Yeah.
gang member. Do the police officers have to commit an assassination to become part of an organization that's called the Brotherhood? See, we
Is
don't
that-
ever talk about that. That's because it's a secret society that don't nobody know nothing about but the Brotherhood. Why is it that Mayor Hancock or Chief White don't have black police officers in the black community? That boggles my
and
mind.
These are questions.
You never seen that. You don't see it right now today.
Charletta,
I live in
you
the
were-
projects, and I've never seen a black police officer down in East Denver.
And I'll actually chime in on that
Yeah.
because so the way hiring is done with the state and with all law enforcement, whether it's Denver, whether it's Colorado Springs, they all have to go through a state background check first and meet some state requirements. And then from there, the departments have their own requirements. In Denver and in Aurora, one thing I've looked at is how do we recruit more African American, more Latino, more
Now, they're on the
officers of
force.
color. And
But they're not in the communities.
Sure, and the problem is one, it's hard to find African American and Latino officers. One, I think there's a disconnect between the community and people who are coming from those communities and feeling like they're a part
And
or can be a part of
that's-
law enforcement.
That may be what we have to address. That may be part of the base problem that no one is really wanting to tackle in a constructive way. It's all pulling apart. Oh, it's victim. No, how can we address this to say you have every right, just like anybody else has every right to do this?
You know what the
What do you
easiest
think?
thing in the world to do? You can get 200 people in a room. Can you get those 200 people to agree on what they love, what they like? No. You can get 200 people to agree on what they hate. And we do that with politics.
Yes.
We do that with politics right now, and we've taken this issue, and we're turning tragedies into travesties. We're taking issues that should be, like you said, human rights issues where we need to bring the community together, and we're tearing it apart. And what we need to do, we need community leaders, folks like me and you, folks like all of us at this table, folks like everyone at home. They need to go and they need to get the police officers. We need to go to the community centers with the police officers, whether that's a lieutenant, chief, whoever, and we need to introduce them into the communities. And right now what we're doing instead is we're waiting for a tragedy to happen. We show up at the tragedy, the politicians and anybody that's looking for camera time, they wave, they look good. That's not fixing problems. That will never fix problems.
Amen.
What we need to do is exactly what I said. We need to unite. We need to say, hey, it's not a black or white issue. It's not an us versus them issue. It's an issue for all of us.
It is.
Here's the thing. When something happens, let me tell you something. When a cop, I have plenty of friends, like you said, cops. My neighbor's a cop, and anybody who knows a cop that knows, if they had to pull that trigger, they didn't just end one life, they ended their own, because they are no longer whole. If they're a true person, they're no longer whole. It hurts them, trust me. Not only did they end that life, but they ruined, they could potentially ruin theirs. They ruin, that family. They ruin their family. And when you take these issues and you nationalize them, you politicize them, you're ruining more than just the one life that was lost. You're ruining that family's life. You're tearing families apart on both the victim and on the police officer. And we need to stop doing that. We need to get the politicizing out of it, and we need the leaders in the community to come together with the police officers. And I will gladly step up. I know you will. I know you will. I know all of us here will. We can go and we can get these police officers and we bring them into the communities. And we don't have those issues that some areas do. I'm not saying we're perfect. We don't have near as bad of issues as there are nationally, but we still have issues that we have to fix.
My son and I,
we can fix it through that way. Not legislation. Me and you will fix things through legislation, but all of us can fix it through that way.
I want to ask Charletta this because you work with victims. Because I want you to come in here and you have some very good ideas on this. And you work with people who have been victimized by violence, who have been on the receiving end of it, their families. How do they feel? You have the finger on their pulse. What's their perspective on all of this? Because I agree with what you're saying. And I want to say, because beforehand, Charletta and I were talking about, it doesn't matter if we're completely polar opposite on everything. There's going to be something that we can agree upon. One thing, and from that one thing, we can find something else to agree upon. And that's kind of what you're talking about.
Exactly.
It's a tree. It's building each branch.
Yeah, it's saying this one. So I want to hear from you.
Okay.
We've all taken up the time.
Well, I just was kind of wanting to hear everyone's perspective before I said anything. What brings me here today is that 21 years ago, I lost my 3-year-old son to a drive-by shooting, which is coined and labeled as black-on-black crime. So we're talking about 3 gang members that were 2 15-year-olds and 1 16-year-old. And this is what is my motivation to do the things that I do, to advocate and things of that nature. So I'm a victim, I'm a survivor, and I've been victimized by in the summer of violence, December 21st, 1995, is when that touched my life. So when we're looking at all of these different things across the board, from state to state, when we're talking about police brutality, we're talking about racial profiling, when we're talking about all these things regarding what's actually happening, there's a fear that has already been erected from centuries, decades, decades. There's been a buildup of fear and especially a person of color. So when you're speaking about the fact that we are and we feel, and it's a reality that we are a targeted culture, people of color, Latino, Hispanic, and African American. We are a targeted culture. Now, these are people of trust. This is where it becomes a problem. This is why it is a focus point. These are people of trust that is causing our children to die. I look at the mothers on the move that was there. Hillary Clinton Congress Hillary Clinton,
The DNC.
invited them to come, all the mothers to come. Their mothers on the move. Trayvon Martin's mother. I mean, all of these women that have suffered, they're all black women that have, their child has been targeted. So, what do? We see a problem that is here. Now, we're talking about secret societies, it's a fact. We're talking about a brotherhood, it's a fact. But there is not only of a place of people abiding and feeling that they're above the law. Well, there's also things taking place that we don't know anything about. It's about integrity. It's about holding steadfast to your oath as an individual.
Yes.
Individual officers. And there has been so many officers that I know of that had to step away from being a police officer because they didn't buy into the brotherhood.
You better say that.
So this is a real issue. And black lives do matter. And so do white lives, and so do Hispanic lives, and so
And
do
police
Latino
lives,
lives.
and the police
And
lives.
the police lives.
and everything. Yes.
So who are we? We're the little guy. Because we're dealing with a person of trust. So what do we do here?
Can I say something? Like you said, let's get into the communities and get with the police.
Yeah.
My son and I did a basketball tournament with District 2, with the police officers, on his basketball court that he built. Terrence Roberts, Prodigal Sons Initiatives, built a basketball court after the Crips had burned down the Holly. He restored it by putting a basketball court up, a soccer court, and a playground, and a Boys and Girls Club up.
That's right.
And invited all the police officers from District 2 to come and have a basketball tournament. All police officers aren't bad, but
They're
there's
not.
always one apple that will spoil the
But
whole
I bet
bunch.
you but you know what? That happens in the churches. That happens in almost.
I'm a pastor. I'm one of the
I
most
know.
hated pastors in this city.
Exactly.
And you pastors that's looking, you know what I'm talking about. We got pastors that act worse than gangbangers.
Well, that's exactly that's my point, is that in any group, there's
Yeah, but we're excuse me, but
That's okay.
we're not talking about a pistol packing person that is in a position of trust.
that is correct.
Yes.
So
Now
what we're
here-
talking about is lives being lost.
Yes.
Behind selfishness.
That's right. And when you're speaking of
Sebastian.
Yeah.
Sebastian,
Sorry.
Senator, when we're when we're speaking of this coming together, ever since the shooting has taken place,
Yeah.
there's been organizations calling the police in, and it's been some attention on this matter.
Yeah.
Chief White has stepped up, and he appeared at some of these events
Yeah.
and to talk to the community. But let me tell you the problem with these this connectiveness. There is no connectiveness.
Yeah,
so
you're right.
what's
And why do you
happening
think
is
that is?
what's happening is we're talking about the surface. There's a fear to get deep down into what's actually happening under the table.
Yeah.
We're not talking about real issues here. So everything is skimmed over, and then everyone, when they leave, they're shaking hands with things are not answered.
And I understand.
Yeah, and
Look,
we gotta answer.
we
it.
have
will-
to
I
answer
will
the
tell you
right
this.
questions. Ask the right questions.
I am not someone who's going to say I understand. I don't. I don't understand what people of color go through with that. I don't. I can't. I'm not going to sit here and BS you and say I do. Okay. But what I do see is this. These events they do, and I know we do them in Aurora. Chief Metz does it. It's this like lunch with a cop or anything like that, or some of those events. Well, you know what? You're exactly right. That's a shake hands. It's a photo op. It's exactly what I say politicians do right now. They show up for a photo op. A photo op doesn't do.
Anything for the issue.
I know this isn't a PG-13
Trump
show,
kiss
so
on a baby.
my grandma tried to get me to kiss a baby the other day when I was doing a bench raid. And I'm sorry, but I'm not. But look,
Now, hold
the
on.
thing is what I'm talking about goes deeper than that. I'm not talking about politicians showing up. We show up. And God, I hate saying we. I'm sorry. I'm not a big politician fan. Since I've met you, you wear a sweater vest. Me and you
He's
get along
awesome.
because you wear a sweater vest. But what I'm talking about is these guys that they're showing up because they're tragedy chasers. They're showing up to chase a tragedy, get their photo up and build their thing. But what we need is we need people that are leaders. You're a leader. What I need you to do is not take it to a basketball event. I'm talking about introduce this cop to the neighborhood, make him walk around. And I guarantee if you go to Chief White or Chief Metz in Aurora, he will agree to this. And you know what happens is when I have a personal connection with you, regardless of the situation, a personal connection, a connection will de-escalate anything. Because I'm a football player. I'm a football player. I have a minor league football team I play on, and we consider ourselves brothers, right? And we fight. I mean, we will get in fights, but the thing that's different between the fight that we will get in on the field between us and versus the other team or anything like that is that connection, because we know each other. We can see eye to eye and we realize, you know what? We have that personal relationship. We're not going to do this. We're not going to go down this path. We're going to figure a better way. And that's what we need, is we need to create the personal connections, not the photo op connections.
So do
Those
you
photo op
believe that
connections-
some police
you know
officers...
how you
That's
do
what
that?
we've been having.
And you
Yeah.
know how
So-
you do
And
that?
that's what we gotta
Did you
change.
believe that
and
part
you
of
do
the
that,
police
you do
officer
that.
situation, the part of the stuff that's going on, is inside brotherhood?
You know,
Like you just said yourself,
I'm not gonna
you and
go
your
down that
football
route.
team, you guys are like brothers.
And you know what? Look, here's the thing. I look at it as this: is I take each case as a case by case.
Yeah.
Because you never know the
It is
situation
case by
that's
case,
going on.
And the reason why I
Because-
say brotherhood, excuse me not to cut you off, because how do you commit murder and get paid a paid leave? How do you do that?
You know, these are
without the
questions that
investigation.
we can't answer that right here because we're
We
not.
don't know.
Because we don't know. But what you're
Because it's a
talking about,
secret.
Sebastian, is communication.
Yeah.
Communication is the universal solvent.
It is.
This is the
It-
source. When I can communicate with Charletta, I can find out what kind of person she is. I can find a point of connection through communication. That's what you're talking about when you take these officers in. Not every officer is going to be good. Not every officer is going to be bad. But here's the thing is that they are there, like you said, they take an oath to protect. And we all have these things called human rights that allow us to communicate. And through communication, we can find that thing that's real. I can find it.
But the thing is, and I understand that, and it's so vitally important because you know how big I am in regards to human life. Like humanity to me, I mean, if I can sum myself up in one word, it's humanitarian. And so for me, it's really important to address these issues. And this is a major issue where people are losing their lives.
Yes.
And I'm in the middle because like I said, I have wonderful friends that are in law enforcement.
My father's a
you know,
retired deputy sheriff.
but I'm talking about, like, we need to talk about the accountability factor and where legislation does come in
Yes.
in regards
Pass
to
some laws.
It's
holding
legislation,
people
it's
accountable.
Policy,
Yeah.
It's so.
Yes.
Well, and I want to go back to something both of you touched on, which is not just communication, but culture. Because sure, you can say like I went to Thomas Jefferson High School and our rivals were the Warriors. And many of my friends are Warriors, but I can't stand the Warriors because, you know.
Because you just can't because
Right,
it's
and
bad.
So how do we get beyond, or how do we take that next step from, sure, this officer may know Jimmy, but does he know Jimmy's cousin, or does he know Jimmy's neighbor? Does
he
he
know
look
you?
at
Well-
does he look at this entire group or this entire community
Yeah.
the way he would look at Jimmy?
Nothing's
You know?
ever going to be perfect. I mean,
Well, no.
we want it to be, but we'll never make anything perfect, and we'll never know the situation until it happens, right? And then, you know, unfortunately, we're a society that is reactive, not proactive in these type of situations and everything.
Yes.
But
Yeah, our job as legislators is to be more proactive.
And it is,
That's
and
right.
that's what we got to do.
That's
But
right.
the problem is when you look at police reform legislation, because that's what we're here for. We're here for police reform talk,
reform.
right? Every time something happens, for the most part, one of two things happen. Either there's a settlement, which that doesn't fix the problem, or there's a legislative change.
It doesn't bring back the life.
Right, exactly.
Let's
It
see
doesn't.
it for what it actually
It
is.
doesn't. All
The settlement does not bring back
it doesn't.
the dead life.
But what we do is we have seen. I mean, you look at case studies, right? You look at these case studies. What was it, like the? I'm gonna lose my track here. What was it, Whitewaters, I believe, something like that? That focused on chemical aerosol, being able to what we can use there. There's certain cases. You know, what was it? The Miranda situation, right? The Miranda rights situation that redefined, you know, the Fourth Amendment and things like that. That's what we have to look at. Is we have to look at it and say, okay, we want to be proactive. We do. We want to be proactive, but there's a lot of situations as legislators we don't know that's going to happen, and we don't think about it because as legislation as a whole, And we do have these subcommittees, and we have committees and such that we sit on, and we talk about it, and that's our focus. But at the same time, we focus on a whole. We have to focus on everything. We focus on our communities. Javon and I, we want to make everything perfect. We do. We can't. We'll never make anybody happy.
Because part of it is you're perfect. Maybe just a little different than my perfect. Or
I
maybe
think
a
my
little
hair,
different
it's
than
my
yours.
hair that's perfect.
Right?
Oh, that's right. We already discussed
So
that.
on that note, with that the perfect on the note, I'll let you finish your comment. We're gonna go to my halftime show because this is my first halftime show. Y'all, that's what's up. We have something special for you. So now with my shows, we're gonna start having a halftime show in regards to maybe an artist, a spoken word artist, someone that can relate to like what we're talking about. And we know that we're talking about tragedy in our communities on both sides. And so I have Tony Exum Jr., who is going to be doing the halftime show for the next like 5 minutes. So I am going to be bringing him up and enjoy.
All right.
Next week's halftime show is me and Javon are playing karaoke, right?
But this man is an amazing artist, as you guys can see,
Yes.
and that was just off the charts. Thanks,
Yes.
Tony.
Nice.
Wow.
All right.
So with that being said, we're gonna dive right back in, and I'm gonna go ahead and let you finish your
thought
comment.
there, yeah. Well, first off, Tony could probably fix half the world's problems with just that right there. But no, what I was saying is we're reactive. We haven't been proactive, right? Headwaters is what I was thinking of, not Whitewaters. I'm not an attorney, so I don't have all of them off the top of my head. But like the Garner decision, it's one of those things that came after the fact, right? We have so many of these that go after the fact.
Yes.
And you brought up a great idea. The independent, not the same attorney general or DA or whatever that they're I said attorney general, DA. That's a great idea. And I think what we need to start seeing is what we have right now in legislation, and this is a wide topic, and I know you'll agree with me, is we have so much divisiveness, we have so much polarization right now that Javon and I are on different political parties. But because of that, right now in this current situation, if we were in the State House, everyone else would attack us if we agreed on the same ideas and came together.
Yeah,
And
well,
that's not the right way to do it. What we need to do is, if you have a great idea, we need to come together and say, hey, that's a great idea, because great ideas aren't Republican ideas or Democrat ideas.
Yes.
They're great ideas. They're not a black
Yes.
or white. They're great ideas, and
Yes.
we need that. So we have to be more proactive, but we don't know what's going to happen. We can try to predict, and we can try to come up with solutions and through legislation and policy on our end. But at the end of the day, when it does happen, we will, like I said, we're a reactive society. We need to do the best we can to actually get something done, not just have settlements, is what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Well,
I ramble.
and Rumble.
Can I?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
What I, as I was reading in a few of the clips of the Body of Christ and some of the weekly news with Lisa Caldron over the Colorado Forum for Latinos, as well as the Black Minister Alliance. So they're calling some people to the table. They're calling some of the leaders. Mayor Hancock one, and then Caldron is calling the chief of police to begin to monitor properly when it comes to Latinos and how much they're stopping them on a regular basis. Okay, so these are the beginning of things, but we have to follow through. We have to follow through
Yes, it's
on
important.
holding people accountable.
I
And
agree
when
with
it
you.
comes to legislation, to laws change, these are things that puts pressure on those that feel they're above the law to
Yes.
respond to
Yes.
what's being written.
And I agree with you.
And like, I want to, because I actually have a question here.
Yeah.
So, what you just said is spot on. And when I'm listening to this discussion on policy and legislation, I'm looking at this as what's the connection between policy and culture? Because this is not just a policy issue,
You're
it is
exactly
a
right.
cultural issue. So how
Very good.
can we change? Because we have to work. I'm white, you're black, I mean, it's like, you're Latino. It's like, so what?
Exactly.
I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, I was telling Charletta this. I ascribe to Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.'s dictum of we should judge each other by the content of our character, not by the color of our skin. But that's not the culture in which we live right now.
Absolutely.
That's right.
And so I think that policy and policy change is one way to make this happen. But at the same time, we've got to pay attention to what can we do as community leaders,
Yes.
and what can you do from the pulpit to help change the culture. Because if we're going to stay divided, if we're going to stay, you're black and I'm white, no honey, I can't sit by you because we're the wrong color. That's never going to bring us together. What's going to put us together culturally?
Having a meeting with Chief White,
Okay.
having a meeting with Michael Hancock, the mayor. And my question is, would a white officer shoot a black youth if a black officer was in the car with him?
I don't know.
You see? We got to bring them together. Again, we got to put Latino officers. Why they're not getting raises and the white officers are getting raises? Why are they getting promoted and the Latino officers aren't getting promoted? Because the fact is inside the system. And the head has to take care of it. It's the
That's
Chief
right.
White's job. It's a Mayor Hancock's job. If not, man, them officers are going to be renegades. They're going to be, I'm telling you, they're going to be loose and they're going to be able to do whatever they want to do. I mean, they
So?
above the law.
And
Until there's discipline inside the police officers' surroundings, again, if the head don't grow, neither is the body.
And that's a strong point. And so it's important for it's important for legislators, for leaders in legislation.
And you got to
that
start
are
legislating
overseeing
towards
their
the
districts,
officers.
that are overseeing
Not just
their-
the youth, not just the public, the people. You got laws for us, but something's wrong with their laws.
Well, those laws are laws. Laws are
But
police
they're
officers.
not going by the law.
When you look at police officers, the way I look at it is laws. The way a police officer should be is laws should mean 10 times more to them. It's the same way with
Yeah,
legislators.
because they
Laws
were
should mean
sold
10
to
times
protect.
more than us because we're the ones that write the policy, and they're the ones that. I hate to use the word enforce, but they're the ones that carry out their when it comes to legal laws and stuff. And you do have a situation right now where there is 101 things that you could point at that can cause problems from all kind of laws that politicians have put in place. Politicians have put a ton of laws in place that shouldn't be in place. There are things that should be gone.
Yes.
There are things that
Yes.
police have to over-police. Look,
That don't
you know
make
how long a
sense,
police
yes.
officer's training is? It's about 6 to 9 months, okay? They go through 6 to 9 months. Some of them have college degrees, some of them don't. They go through a rigorous training to focus on being able to enforce laws and stuff, but they're not lawyers. They're not people that study for 8 years to do this. They're not the ones writing the laws. They're the ones going through it, and sometimes they may misinterpret it. And you know what? They misinterpret it because we put so many laws in front of them, and what does that do? That doesn't help anybody. That hurts the communities. That hurts everyone. We need to stop all this crazy number of laws and regulations that we put up there and start making things more simple. And I will tell you guys this is a little bit off topic, but it's something that popped in my head. It's called shoot, no shoot scenario that police officers go through. Every police officer goes through, okay? When you go in, you have a background check, you have a mental exam, you have a physical exam, and then you have a shoot, no shoot scenario. And they have to go through these numerous times. They have to go through the shoot, no shoot scenarios. And they are tough, and it's tough decisions. And when you go through one of them, it really makes you think because you don't know. And I understand there needs to be use. There needs to be less lethal force use. We need to focus on retraining, to focus on what can be what and what can be what. But if you feel threatened, I'm sorry. I am for change and I am for cops. You can be both, but you have to understand in some of these situations they are individual situations and we don't know, we weren't there, and we have to look at it just as that. We have to say, look, we can't pick one side or the other just yet. We have to figure out all of it and try to let the legal system work its way out.
There's
And-
the accountability that you were talking about, Angie, because you know what? Is every decision that you've made the right decision?
I'm a pastor and I still make mistakes.
Exactly. We all make mistakes.
Don't lie.
And so
We know you're
therefore,
Gotta get rid
so
of me.
anyway, but it's interesting because as I sit here and listen to this and I think of what Charletta said, we're not getting under the table here because I don't think we can in an hour. But I think that we have laid some very important things
on the table to
on the
discuss.
table
Yeah.
of culture and versus policy and how do they come together. But it's always very interesting. I think that conflict continues to happen because and we were talking, Charlotte and I were talking about this before, because there's someone, not something, but someone there is continually pushing it. They want that. They want
The
this
division,
division.
yes.
Yeah.
They want this chasm of hate and distrust.
And we
I-
got to
Look
bridge
at-
that
look at
gap.
when it happens.
We have to bridge the gap.
Look at when it happens,
Just
though. Look at
point
when
blank,
these things
we have
happen.
to bridge the gap.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what group it is, the Republicans do it,
Okay,
the Democrats
hold on.
do it. It's these groups that come in at election time and they're so well funded. And and this makes me so mad because we're having the right discussion. We are having the right discussion, but unfortunately, you don't see this mediacized and politicized during non-election years, and that makes me so angry.
Okay.
Because this is
But
not
now, hold
a
on.
2016 issue. This is an issue
Yes.
It is
in
for the
every
ages.
year.
Yes.
Every day
It
this is an
is.
issue.
It
Now
is.
here's the thing, because you didn't let me finish.
Sorry.
It's
I'm-
okay.
You have to bring out the boxing gloves. No, I'm just kidding.
It's like,
I don't know. I'm a teddy bear. I get beat up.
That's right. When you get your doctorate, you learn to say, wait a minute, I didn't finish my thought here. So there are groups there, but as you started to say, Angie, that's so important, and is that Charletta and I were talking about, is that it is up to us, because at the end of the day, they're going to try to create division. They're going to try to do all of that, but if we're at this grassroots, ground level,
Absolutely.
saying, sister, we're linking arms.
Yes.
And we're going to do something.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
if we link arms enough, I don't know if you ever watched the movie Ants. Not Ants, but A Bug's Life. Remember The Bug's Life? It was a Pixar film. And it was like, so the ants, right? They're getting
I remember
completely
it. Don't look at me like
suppressed.
that. I'm not that.
That's right,
young.
that
Come
old.
on.
They're completely suppressed by the grasshoppers. And the grasshoppers are horrible. Until the ants realized that if they linked arms and if they came together, that they could fight against those grasshoppers. The grasshoppers are whoever it is that's in whatever level that is pushing this divisiveness. And you all, as legislators, have to pay attention to that, because it does happen in the legislature. That's where policy begins. You guys are the ones who make it.
Yes.
And so we need to say, we can come together as a grassroots. If you're going to talk about what's under the table, because if you find the right why, the problem will resolve.
There is always a solution to the problem. And on that note,
Yeah.
it's important for us as grassroots and the community leaders to bring grassroots to these problems, and us putting people, leaders, in that position
Yeah.
to be able to be a voice and to be able to advocate. So for me, if a political person is in their seat, they are representing the people in their district and in
Yes.
their state.
Yes.
And they have a responsibility
Yes.
to their community and to
Yes.
identify the problems, identify these issues, and come with the solutions. And so we, the people, in our states, in our districts, in our communities, get to elect you guys.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so it's so important for community to know who they're putting in that place.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when they go in that place, then also holding them accountable for the solutions that need to be made in their districts.
Yes.
I think that's
very good.
very important.
And
Yes, that
that's
is.
actually exactly what I was going to touch on, especially in terms of, do these things come up during political seasons? And I would say, yeah, there's probably more attention given to them in political seasons, but we're constantly addressing these things. Last year, which was a non-president or non-election year, I ran the bill to ban the chokehold by law enforcement.
That's
It
awesome.
didn't pass that year. It passed this year, which is
they're
interesting
still
because
doing it.
this is, well, it just passed. So it just got signed into law.
Election year gets bad.
Yeah, exactly.
But you brought it up, and that's the right thing to
and
do.
I think,
like
yeah, I
NFL
think we've got to
rules.
continue to identify, why are these things happening? Why was this person pulled over for him to get shot? Why are there certain communities that may be seeing over policing? One thing I used to notice when I lived in Denver, I worked in the tech center, but I lived on 40th and Williams, which is East Denver, Northeast Denver. I used to count how many police officers I would see south of Colfax. And before Colfax, I'd see 3 or 4. South of Colfax, maybe 1, maybe. And so there are communities that are being over-policed. And those are things that we have to listen to from our constituents to say,
Yes.
you know,
Yes,
why am I
absolutely.
why
Have
is my
to
kid
listen
getting
to.
pulled over
Yes.
all the
Yeah.
time? Or why is this
Because
happening?
that's
That's
not
what the
okay.
issue was. He
Because-
kept getting pulled over, and his
Yeah.
mother made a complaint. And when she made a complaint, they started harassing him even more until he got shot.
Well,
And
those
leave.
are the
all-
things-
The ideal
all
was he wasn't
equal
supposed to
before
live.
the law.
Yeah.
That's
See?
right.
But now that he lives, they got a $75,000 cash bond on him, so he can't talk.
What?
See, but
Man, there's some deep stuff going on.
That
Of
would
course
be a
there are. There's
And
always
then-
going to be, yes.
and so-
I'm sure.
And so I know that we're getting close to the
Oh, we
time.
are,
So
aren't
with
we?
that being said, like I wish we had more time to discuss this, but at the end of the day, what the statement that I just made right now,
Yes.
it's very important for community to know who their leaders are. We're the constituents. We need to come together as community leaders, linking up with the people that are our voice for
Yes,
the state.
yes.
And making sure that these things are being addressed in their districts, because if they're not, and you guys are not doing your jobs, then we, the people, can either elect you or not elect you.
Right.
You know, and it's important to hold that accountability because we all
Yes.
have to be accountable for the things and the actions that we take. And
Yes.
so it's important that we let you guys know that you have that responsibility to put those people in those places, and that's why I have you here, Javon, because we had passed five bills
Five
just
bills
this
last
year
year.
for police reform. So we're on the right track. We're having this conversation. We need to get more people involved in having
Yes.
these kinds of conversations with communities so that we all can bring the change that needs to be changed and make, effective.
Yes.
It has to be effective. There has to be intention. There has to be purpose.
Yes.
We have to be purposeful. We have to be intentional with the decisions and the moves that we make strategically.
Yes.
So that we make the world and our communities
Yes.
better.
Yes.
Connected.
And connected.
Yes.
And so we have to be
Not-
purposeful. And I believe that all of you guys are purposeful for the work that you guys are doing. I'm excited for not just us having this meeting, having this talk show, and getting this information out to not only here locally, but all over the world. And I think it's important to empower and get other people on the bandwagon. I want people to know how they can get a hold of you guys as well. And I want them to find out who these guys are. Because let me tell you, it's important for you to know someone. It's important for you to know what they're doing to bring about that change. Because we're some movers and shakers. That's just what it is. We're
right.
movers and shakers. We're tired of the status quo. We're tired of being robotic. We're tired. People are tired. People are tired of the
Yes.
same old thing because that's the
Yes.
definition of insanity is keeping doing the same thing and expecting different results. It doesn't work that way. We're always moving, we're always growing, and it's important for us to identify these things and be a voice for what is happening and standing in the gap
Yes.
and seeing that change that needs to be changed. We need to be the change.
Yes.
And so with that being said, guys, I hate to say like it's over, but it's over. And with that being said, how can they get a hold of you and give them some information on how they can get a hold of you,
Okay,
Dr.
they can
Patricia
get a
Ross?
hold of me by, this is What Are Human Rights? This is Youth for Human Rights. You can go to humanrights.com and you can find out about human rights. And we are the Colorado chapter, or the Rocky Mountain chapter. And you can call the office of humanrights.org, humanrights.com and United for Human Rights. And then they can get a hold of me through there.
Awesome. What about you, Charlotte?
You can go to Facebook Surviving Mothers on the Facebook page, and you can find me and all my information's on there.
You can find me on JavonMelton.com, Facebook, Twitter. Look me up.
Sweet.
State Capitol.
Pastor George Roberts, the New Heritage Christian Center, 720-275-6708.
Two ways, SebastianChun.com, but something that I believe that any political leader needs to do is a number. You can reach me directly. My personal number is 720-999-7783. I'm more than open to anybody calling me. I want to hear from everybody. I don't want to represent one part of my district. I want to represent all of it.
All right, with that being said, you know how you can follow Angie from the block. Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, and I may
working
start
it.
my own. But with that being said, Angie's signing out. Much love, y'all.